Our next speaker is Dominik Burziwoda. He is studied business, finance, and law in Rotterdam, Madrid, and Münster, and is the CEO and founder of Million Friends and Perfood, and maybe other companies. Not sure if I understood it right earlier. My recognition of the Million Friends app was that it was used for Lübeck's large COVID-19 ELISA study. And so some of you might have used it already. And yeah, Perfood is working on subscription apps around nutrition and health. And yeah, I'm looking forward for your input to the session today.
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity to present a little bit of our company and myself over here. Sorry about my background. The only one that I had before was one from a German industrial organization. It's the Spitzenverband Digitale Gesundheitsversorgung, which is an industry association of startups in digital therapeutics that are all developing DiGA, where I'm also active with voluntary work. So but I changed that background now and moved to these beautiful islands of Island Mujeres in the background. I have a little bit of a presentation about Perfood and what we are doing, also about AI. As mentioned before, my background is not in artificial intelligence. I studied finance mainly, which is also has to do with data. And my basic knowledge is basically stochastic models that tend to be used also in finance. And to me, artificial intelligence is merely a technology that we use to create information from data. And so pretty simple, maybe. And that's how I think about it. And that's also a little bit of the approach that we have at Perfood. Let me share my presentation really quick that I have built for you guys. I hope everybody can see it. Does this work?
Yeah, this works.
Okay. In case you have any questions, please also feel free to interrupt or put them to the chat. I'm happy to answer them anytime. So Perfood, what we basically currently, and I apologize for the slide being in German, but I believe that much of the audience is German native. So this is about what lifestyle factors mean in today's diseases. And we see that actually lifestyle factors account for much of our healthcare issues that we have. So the problems, diabetes, earlier we had a project on breast cancer. And actually breast cancer is a disease that is mainly related to elevated glucose, insulin resistance, and obesity. Also colon cancer, for instance, various diseases, stroke, heart attack. Those are all acquired diseases, so to speak. And this is a little bit of an example how we can translate certain factors into health. And we see that the second most important aspect is body weight, actually, obesity. And body weight also oftentimes comes in line with elevated blood glucose. And we see also that here we have obesity, and then there's consumption again of food, and again food in the last part. So apparently food takes a major part in causing these diseases. And the goal of our company is to make a difference in helping people with healthy aging. We defined that for ourselves, that it's a state where we are at full mental and physical capacity, full consciousness, and an absence of disease. And there are certain biochemical processes, immunological, hormonal processes, and those are impacted by our actions. And we believe that, among other factors, nutrition is the biggest lever that we have in modulating these biochemical processes, and with that then leading to better health. And our approach to that is that we try to help people to eat a low glycemic diet, so a diet that keeps our blood glucose levels rather stable. And it turns out that strong glucose variation causes weight gain, metabolic inflammation, and an imbalance of hormones and neurotransmitters. And when we compare that to a low glycemic diet, then we oftentimes get metabolic health, improved body weight, and hormonal balance, and that leads ultimately to better health. Now, there have been numerous studies actually analyzing the effect of low glycemic diet to certain diseases. Most of them are general low-carb diets or ketogenic diets. Oftentimes in studies, ketogenic diets are not really ketogenic, but just very low carb, because the study subjects are not in ketosis actually. But there is much knowledge out there actually on this, what I'm showing here with the relationship between glucose and disease progression. Now, the issue is that everyone responds to food completely individual. So there is no generalized low glycemic diet. By the way, because here we are talking also a lot about regulation, those that are fans of the Nutri-Score, it's probably not going to work. I see that in our data, and I have very strong doubts that we will be solving any problems. I actually think we will make it worse, because we will bring people into a situation where they believe that they are eating healthy, but they're actually not on an individual level. And my personal story with that is actually when we started the company, I'm now 39 years old. I was 35 years. My morning glucose was 104 milligram per deciliter, and I was 93 kilos in my 183 centimeter height. And my breakfast was a muesli. Like, as a good German, I used to eat muesli every day for breakfast, so oatmeal. And at 11 a.m. in the morning, I used to have a banana, right? So I felt very, very comfortable that I was having a very healthy breakfast. And then I was treating myself with a currywurst, so some sausage or something like that, for lunch. Not all the time, actually. I also had stuff that is considered healthy for lunch from time to time. I was doing exercise 3 times a week. So I used to go running, cycling, to the gym, playing tennis, doing sports with playing football, that kind of stuff, right? So one would say that I had an overall healthy lifestyle, but I was slightly overweight, and I had this fasting glucose of 104 milligram per deciliter, which is considered already borderline pre-diabetic. Now, 7 years before, when I was still in university, I was 82 kilos. I don't know the fasting glucose, but I presume it was much less than that. So one can probably figure out that 10 years later, I would be overweight and probably with a type 2 diabetes in my 40s, right? And that would have brought me into the exact route. By the way, my father, I have a negative family anamnesis, so my father was overweight and died of a heart attack rather early, also in other parts of my family. So I should be careful with that. And I did our own personalized nutrition program, and it turns out that oatmeal gives me a glucose spike to 190 milligram per deciliter. If I showed that to my physician, he would probably think that I'm almost diabetic with that reaction, specifically if it's oatmeal, which is considered rather healthy. So a blood glucose spike to 190 milligram per deciliter in a healthy individual is actually awful, and that with a meal that is considered healthy. So if you go out and ask any nutritionist whether you should have muesli for breakfast, they will tell you, yes, please, that's a great idea. And to me, it turns out when I have white bread with Nutella, then my blood glucose reaction is in the 140s. So much better, right? So clearly, the recommendation to me is to have white bread with Nutella if I want to stabilize my blood glucose response. And this is measured with data. It's just plain true. So it sounds odd, but that's just how it is in my specific case. Obviously, you shouldn't eat every day the same stuff. It doesn't mean that I eat Nutella every day. Actually, I don't like it that much, but it's just a simple scientific fact in my individual case. So yeah. And here's another example from our data to visualize that a little bit. So here I'm subject 4, by the way. This is white bread on the other side, so also something unhealthy. And you can see my blood glucose spike to close to 190, close to 200 on oatmeal. And you see it here for bread, where it's rather stable. So clearly I shouldn't eat oatmeal, but I should eat bread for breakfast. And you see it's vice versa for subject 7. That person should avoid bread and have rather the oatmeal instead. And you see that the gold subject 6 can have both. So this person should just eat actually what he likes best, right? Because after all, nutrition is also a lot about taste. And in this specific case, this person can pick. Lucky one, right? Now, what do? We based with this technology, we developed digital therapeutics. We have Million Friends, which is our weight loss program. We started in the unregulated consumer space because even after MDD, it was already difficult for startups to get an MDD certification. With MDR, it basically got virtually impossible when you want to launch a company. So we started in the unregulated space with our consumer product, Million Friends, very successful. And then we started to develop digital therapeutics that are supposed to be reimbursed by health insurance groups. Our first one, I will talk a little bit about that, is for migraine. And what we do is we combine state-of-the-art advice on positive lifestyle aspects, move more, sleep longer, try this and that, tailored to patients with a specific disease. And we add our technology for personalized low glycemic diet on that. And this technology actually was trained with patent pending algorithms where we used machine learning to interpret blood glucose curves accurately on an individualized level. And now, why use machine learning? Well, it's easy. It turns out that it got the best results, right? And so the chain is, if you have very accurate assessment on blood glucose curves, then the person will take very correct actions to keep blood glucose curves stable, and that will make the person healthier. So it's pretty easy, right? If we could have done that with a simple linear regression, we would have done that. Now with a new EU regulation, we are facing a trade-off. Are we using AI or the simple linear regression, making the product slightly worse, but with that avoiding the regulatory burden of this AI regulation? That could be the case, right? So after all, it will make people a little bit less healthy, just because for the sake of regulation, I guess, I don't see any benefit, to be perfectly honest, but so the advantage of digital therapeutics, obviously, is since it's all nutrition-based lifestyle intervention, it doesn't have side effects. So the product, we have a product for migraine. I said I have here. Migraine is treated with beta blockers as a first-line therapy. Here's the patient information, and you can read through the side effects, and it's awful. I don't want to have any of those actually. There's erectile dysfunction actually also on the list, and that's why 80% of patients drop out of that prophylactic therapy with beta blockers within 1 year. So it's not a good approach. And with our product, they actually have metabolic improvements in metabolic health. Now we use an Abbott Freestyle Libre sensor. We can also use other glucose sensors. People wear them for 2 weeks, track their diet with our app. They just track what they regularly like to eat. We have some recommendations for standardized test meals because we want to give general rules. In my specific case, for instance, my glucose level is lower when I combine carbohydrates with fat, with lipids, right? This explains also why the chocolate or the Nutella keeps my blood glucose stable, but it also is for pasta. I take cream sauce instead of tomato sauce. Pizza, for instance, keeps my blood glucose rather stable, right? So I need to make sure that I have sufficient share of fats. With proteins, it doesn't work. When I have a protein bar, I have strong blood glucose elevation. It doesn't work for me at all. So everybody is different. We see certain groups of people reacting in a similar pattern. We don't know why, by the way, but we see distinct groups for some food pairs that we compare with each other. And then people get a report, and there we tell them which foods to avoid. And it's not about what to eat, actually. It's about what to avoid. And sometimes, in most cases, actually, people have to avoid 5 to 10% of the food that they're already eating. And those are really the few harmful foods. And if they change that, they will get a significant benefit. Now, for our algorithms, we used actually 7 million data points up to date. So they're continuously improved. Obviously, we're working on that. Yeah, so we gathered a lot of data that we used for that to get to that level of accuracy. And then the first product for migraine, this is what we are able to achieve with that. So on our last prospective study, we see 63% improvement or reduction in migraine days. We see a 50% responder rate of 73% and 41% improvement in time lost due to migraine. Now, to put that a little bit into perspective, in general, if a medication is able to achieve an improvement of 50% or more in migraine days, then it's considered a great medication that will be also reimbursed by health insurance groups. There are also monoclonal CGRP antibodies. They cost 5,500 euros per year. And since migraine is a chronic disease, you can expect that they will cost that 10 to 20 years per each patient to the healthcare system. And their improvement in migraine days is approximately at the same level as for our digital therapy. But we do it with personalized nutrition and not with an antibody. But I mean, it's good. Those are great medications, by the way, but we think this approach here also has some merit to it. We are currently in the approval process. Then we have today earlier, we were talking a little bit about regulation. Now, sometimes because I founded the startup company, people asked me, hey, how is it to found a startup? Great that you did that. That's like super hip and cool. And yeah, and I mean, we are not that cool because we're in Lübeck and not in Berlin, but still. And now but sometimes I'm a little bit scared, to be honest, because I see that we are shifting towards an environment where we will be getting more and more regulation. And I'm really concerned that we are not achieving anything with that. Actually, we're making things very worse. And Europe is in a very bad shape, right? Sometimes we have this level of, we believe we have a certain degree of moral superiority in Europe where we have to teach the entire world about anything. But if you look at the companies that are most successful, I mean, there are companies in the US that are just as valuable as the entire German DAX, right? And that's a problem. Now, people say, okay, why is it? Yeah, that's an exaggeration if Tesla is just as valuable as the entire automotive industry. I don't think it's that easy, because apparently the global capital markets, and there are many smart people, believe that the growth expectations for Tesla are so high that in maybe 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, they will have a market share that is as dominant today as that of the German automotive industry, right? And that is a problem, because a stock price or a capital market valuation reflects future expectations. sometimes they turn out to be wrong, yes, but oftentimes they turn out to be right. And if anybody would have bought the Google stock or the Amazon stock in 2006, probably these guys would be really happy today, right? So you can see that the expectations of Google or Amazon in the year 2006 were not overrated, but underrated actually, because it turned out to be much more valuable today than it was back then. And so I'm concerned that we are limiting ourselves even further with additional regulation in any different kind. And oftentimes we have politicians, or we have a lot of politicians that promote startups, and they want to establish now a 25,000 euro starting grant for all entrepreneurs, right? And I think that's nice. We were also recipients of an Exist grant, which gives you like 120,000 euros roughly, and that's awesome. I mean, it gave us a lot of flexibility and freedom, right? But it doesn't solve your problems, because if you found a company, that means you have no product, no sales, no proof of concept, no money, and then it means how big is your private bankroll, you know? And I don't come from a rich background. It depends. Now you guys can all look at your bank account and see, first of all, are you willing to bet all of what's there on the simple ideas that you haven't tested and figured out at all, right? I mean, then are you willing to bet on yourself that you will be able to figure it out and build a product out of it? And will you be able to tolerate that if you go to zero and maybe even below zero? And what do you do in that situation, right? So this is how you start, and this is how I started, and I was at that point. Then you have to work a lot. You don't get paid for it. If you get an Exist scholarship, you get around 2,500 to 3,000 euros gross. Actually, you have to pay still health insurance groups and taxes from that. So that's the money that you have to live with. And you have incredible uncertainties. So you have 80 to 100-hour work weeks, no vacation. I have been on vacation last week, and it's funny because my girlfriend is always complaining because, and even the people around me, because I'm sitting with a laptop at the beach and I'm working. I'm all day working. We go to Sylt, and the only reason why we go there is because I tell my girlfriend she can stay there at the beach and read, and she really likes the island, and I can take the time working. And I'm sitting there with my laptop. I have a power bank here, a very big one, that I can recharge my laptop if it runs out of battery at the beach. And I only bought it for that. It's a true story, right? You have to do everything yourself. So if you're, well, it doesn't matter where you're working now, but if you see that there are pens and pencils at the office, or that the office is clean, well, if you found a company, you can do that yourself to begin with, right? That's just the way it is. No salary, no mortgage, no credit card, actually. They don't give you a credit card when you found a company because they want you to have a certain amount of credit history as a bank. You have your personal credit card, maybe, but you don't get a corporate credit card, actually. That's also regulation in Germany. And then you have to convince investors. The probability of success is 0.3% to get venture capital in Germany, roughly. We were lucky. We got venture capital. We are financed from Boehringer Ingelheim Venture Fund, from Verve Ventures in Switzerland, and the German family office. But we did get that because we have great business angels that did bet on us at the very beginning, and they took a lot of patience with us actually for 2 years. And those are family business owners from Lübeck, right? So oftentimes we criticize that, but those are actually family business owners that gave us the first million that we could work with, right? And that's to get the consumer product to market. So we were really, really lucky. Yeah, and I'm honest with you, Neo. I'd love to tell you that I'm that great and the other people, but it's actually a lot of luck. Probably to raise a Series A investment or a venture capital funding round, you can picture that you have to take around, or you have to approach around 150 to 300 venture capital funds, right? So it takes a lot of time and it's really arduous, and you have to have the stamina to do that. And so then you have to also convince customers, employees, academic partners, key opinion leaders, regulators, and all that kind of stuff. And then, lovely, you have to adhere to all regulations, right? And now when people talk about MDR or GDPR, they're like, yeah, but you know, it's important and you should adhere to that. And yeah, we have to regulate that. And yeah, I totally agree. I also think that that stuff is important, right? And I want my personal data to be protected. And I want the medical devices that are used with me, and I'm also a consumer of medical devices, to be safe and clinically validated and that kind of stuff, right? I'm not an entrepreneur only, but I'm also a citizen, and I'm also a person that has health insurance, and I'm also a patient oftentimes, right? But there is not only MDR and GDPR. There are all these other laws, like be it employment protection, be it Telemediengesetz, so the telecommunications laws, be it just regular contractual laws or insolvency laws. Perhaps you have to know about that, right? You have all these different laws nowadays. Corona-Schutzverordnung to regulate how you deal with COVID at the office, whether you send people to home office or not, right? And in my introduction, it was said that I did not only study finance, I also studied kind of law. So I did this as a matter of interest. I did a master's in law in corporate law here in Münster, and I'm lucky because my girlfriend is actually a judge. So I can ask her a bunch of questions, right? And she's legally quite knowledgeable. And you have to do that kind of stuff, right? But you cannot hire lawyers for that because it's just too expensive. These guys charge you 200 to 300 euros per hour, and you're not even worse. Sometimes we pay 500 euros per hour nowadays. And you don't have the money to do that. So you're actually kind of hoping all the time that nothing goes wrong, because you will get in deep problems when, but actually you didn't have any chance to avoid them, to be honest. But yeah, and it's, we are asking a lot from people and from companies, from entrepreneurs. And I think sometimes with very, very limited upside. It doesn't oftentimes match what people actually want, I guess. And finally, you have to build and sell a product when you adhere to all these regulations. So that's you do on the side, kind of, when you're done in overtime. Now, some thoughts perhaps on AI, because we had a great presentation before that, and I took some notes. If we have still time for that, I'm trying to rush through the presentations, but yeah, I don't know. I lost track a little bit because it started late, so yeah, I apologize. I
think you have 2 or 3 more minutes if that's,
okay.
if that works for you.
I don't need, so there's 5 points. So first of all, human decisions are also oftentimes puzzling to me. The decision, artificial intelligence, perhaps takes decisions that are not possible to explain, but so are human decisions. And oftentimes humans lie, actually. So you don't know why they decided about things and what they really mean, right? So you have a similar level of problems there. Then it was said that the new regulation gives legal security. Yes, but it should not be an end in itself. You know, legal regulation shouldn't be there just to get legal security. It should solve a real, actual problem, because otherwise, in dubio pro reo, I mean, then we shouldn't be held accountable for that if nothing goes wrong, right? And just for having the sake of legal security, I don't really see it why we should regulate it because of that. Then we also have to ask ourselves, what products are not existing because of regulation? That means when you get sick tomorrow and you don't have the right medication for the specific disease, perhaps there could have been a product to help you, but it wasn't developed because it wasn't allowed to, because there was something holding it back, perhaps some regulation, right? So it's not only what can go wrong with existing products, but what can go wrong because of products do not exist, Yeah, and this is an important point that I want to make, and regulation limits us here. And then discrimination, at the beginning, my name was introduced, Burziwoda, so I have a Polish last name. I'm German for 3 generations. But sometimes I realize that it's much easier in life when I reserve tables at a restaurant, for instance, similar stuff like that I use my girlfriend's last name, which is von Papen. So much easier. When I started working in an investment bank. There were more people working that had a von, so some royal form in their name, than people with a foreign last name. I don't know, maybe it's because these guys are all smarter than the guys with a foreign last name, but it could also be that there's some form of discrimination happening, right? It's also the case for all the law firms that we work with, by the way. I always see many more German names or vons than actually would make sense, even if you if you kind of balance it out for prevalence within society. And then the last part is, if there's anyone, it's really difficult for me to think on something where a government service was better than a private service. So I went to university in the Netherlands, which is a public university, really great. I had a great time over there. I am a scholar due to the exist grant with the University of Lübeck, and we do a lot of research with the University of Lübeck, and I know this university really well, but I'm not saying it's the University of Lübeck. I'm sure it's with other public universities similar to that. And then I went to a private university to study my master's in finance degree in Madrid. It's IE Business School. It's a private university. So I have seen different parts of our educational system, and I can truly say that the best educational outcome was for me was a private university. It was plain better than what I see in public universities. It's as simple as that. Technology was better. I did my master's in finance degree 10 years ago. 10 years ago, we had digital learning tools. We did online presentations and that kind of stuff. We had access to everything. We had all the databases we needed to. It was just plain better. And I believe that usually private companies do a better job in just delivering services than the government. And it says, yeah, and that's it.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you for all your ideas. I wish I would have known what you were saying 3 minutes ago. Then I would have said it would be excellent to bring this over to the panel discussion. Now we have to memorize these thoughts all with us to get back. Maybe we get back to them later. Actually, we had a bunch of questions in the chat during your talk. And I would like to come back to some of them, actually. Yeah. One question was for your first anecdote on Nutella versus muesli is, what was this muesli? Was it Knusper muesli with 30% sugar, or was it, I don't know,
yeah,
oats?
Yeah, it's funny that people, I mean, I get that question all the time. So it's like, it was a regular Seitenbacher protein, Seitenbacher Sportler muesli, that kind of stuff, right? So, and by the way, even we did a study where we compared 2 different kinds of muesli with each other. And it turned out actually that on average, not on an individual level, but on average, the chocolate muesli had a better produced a better glycemic response than the regular oatmeal or the regular muesli, which is kind of understandable because it has more fat. So on average, it should actually produce that, but on an individual level, it varies completely, and we see everything. We see, by the way, we also see people with strong blood glucose elevations when they drink a Coke Light. So no carbohydrates, no sugar in there.
Yeah, okay. And so while this was all what you have shown was pretty anecdotic, do you have any like scientific evidence that supports this low glycemic diet? And also, yes, is there So you didn't have anything in your slides. So I was wondering if there's actual evidence beyond that, or is it
so for the migraine, okay, first of all, for low glycemic diet in general, there's tons of scientific evidence. If you put in Google Scholar or in PubMed, low GI or ketogenic or low glycemic diet, you will find tons of studies on a bunch of different fields with it. So that's a pretty understood topic, actually. Then on a personalized level, there's also been studies, well, not from us only, but from Israel, from London, from University of Lübeck, where we proved that personalized levels. So it's actually, in the medical community, to a large extent, it's not questioned whether nutrition should be personalized. So it's kind of, nowadays, it's kind of understood. 4 or 5 years ago, that wasn't necessarily the case, but nowadays it's clear. And for our technology and approach, so we did a variety of studies. One where I provided the results for migraine. This was a real-world evidence trial, but we did it in partnership with the University of Lübeck. There we generated the data that was from 50 subjects, statistically relevant, significant. And here, so some
sorry, I have to interject. There was a placebo control, so is the reduction...
No, it was not placebo control,
okay.
But you cannot do placebo control in digital therapeutics. The market standard is actually that you do weight control designs. And in this clinical study, which is going to start next week, probably, you can already register as an interested participant. If you have migraine, this is on your opportunity to test the product early on before it gets market approval. And it's a randomized trial with two patient groups. One is a weight control group, so everybody gets the product later on. One is a weight control group, and one is the intervention group, and it has 500 participants. So it's a really ambitious trial. It's fully digital. You can take part from anywhere, actually. You don't have to visit any doctor's office. And we also do it in partnership with the University of Lübeck and the Institute for Inflammatory Medicine over there. And so if you have migraine or know someone who has migraine, it's a great opportunity to participate. Some advertisement. To start, okay. to stop with something positive where I was complaining.
Okay, yeah. Do we have any other questions? I think there were, is there anything from the chat? This one was answered, I think. Okay, Dirk, there is one, you had one question in the chat. Do you want to still ask this, or has it been answered so far, or do we just move on?
I can ask the question also with the mic. Mr. Burziwoda, do you have plans, or is your application already a DIGA in Germany? Digitale Gesundheitsanwendung, according to the relatively new law from the BMG, which came out last year, I believe.
Yeah, so we are in the approval process for that. This is also the study. The study is starting early. We are still in the approval process. But this is actually what the study is for, to get then the final approval as a digital therapy, as a DIGA in Germany. So,
yeah. How long does the process take from first application? I think that's with the B Farm to...
Yeah, so it's with the B Farm. So on paper, it takes 3 months. That's the regulation. In practice, it doesn't. Currently, 1/3 of all filed applications actually get approval. And mainly it's because of the evidence that the digital therapeutics show, because the Institute of the Federal Institute of Drugs and Medical Devices they became super strict now because they became under public scrutiny, and most of the time it's a process of submit and withdraw. And to my experience, you don't know, when you're very lucky, I guess it takes 3 months, but when you're a little bit less lucky, it might as well take 18 months. By the way, a time where you have to still pay your people's salaries and that kind of stuff, right? So, so that's the thing actually, because if the government, for these people, that processes, it's just a file that they have to review, and they like to be really strict with that, right? But I honestly think that in 2 years from now, we will have maybe 20, 30 DIGAs in the market. We will have some in the approval process. And then we also will have like 20 to 30 startups that just went bankrupt because they thought they could file for a DIGA, but just because the approval process took so long, they went belly up. Yeah, that's a likely scenario to happen.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so then thank you, Dominik Burziwoda, for your impressions again.